So it passed. The federal budget, known as the Ryan Murray deal, resulted in major cuts to military pensions. This isn't going to be the last of cuts to the military. We've already seen recently changes to tuition assistance, which have resulted in major cuts there. Special duty pays have been cut. BAH, changes are coming there. Also, changes are coming to TRICARE. Reservists have already seen changes to their TRICARE benefits. And also for 2014, military pay raises will be cut by 1 percentage point under the inflation rate, which is the same way they were cutting the military pensions, which I'll go over in a moment. So what is this going to mean? They are going to make a 1% cut below the inflation level every year until you hit age 62. Inflation is a rise in the cost of living. It's rising prices, from everything from groceries to gasoline to your energy costs. The government figures the cost of living by what is known as the CPI, or the Consumer Price Index. The Federal Reserve has a target of 2% as their target inflation level every year. Most economists believe that the CPI is a conservative number, and that usually the inflation rate is several points higher than that. And the reason for this is there are several things that are not even figured into the CPI, such as energy costs and food costs, which are some of your biggest expenses. So this budget cut is going to keep your COLA from adjusting to the increase in the cost of living. So your pension will no longer keep up with inflation. This is going to be a common theme in budget cuts. The federal government has huge deficits per year and has an astronomical total debt. The only way they can hope to service this debt is to inflate away its value. They'll print money every year to pay their debts, to pay their obligations. However, in order to keep their costs down, they will keep the military pensions and military pay from adjusting along with that inflation level. So your purchasing power every year will continue to go down. Another cut being made in the exact same manner is a cut to military pay increases. This happens every year purely just to keep up with inflation. So now that number will be at 1%. The target inflation rate by the Federal Reserve is 2%. So your quick math of the Federal Reserve's 2% inflation minus the 1% pay increase, you have a loss of purchasing power of 1% per year, purely based on the pay increases no longer keeping up with the inflation rate. This will not be the end of cuts to military benefits or military pay. In fact, over the next few years, there's going to be a lot more cuts made. If you go back to an article I wrote last July on the Military Economist homepage, I talk about some of the major cuts that will likely be made to our healthcare and retirement in the years to come. My issues with this budget deal revolve around three major points. The first being it is a break in trust from Congress to the military. Many members of the military have done multiple deployments, and they have done so with the promise of a certain set retirement once they've hit at least their 20-year mark. Many of them have already planned family budgets around that promised money, and now will have to make significant financial adjustments due to that loss of funds. Which leads me to my second point. In this budget deal, there were other voting blocs who could have received cuts as well, and many of them not only did not receive cuts, many of them received an increase in their allotted funds. Which leads me to my last point. Military members understand shared sacrifice. We all know as a country that the federal budget and the federal deficits are not sustainable, and that something needs to be done about them in the near future to prevent, an economic catastrophe down the road. Military members would be willing to participate in the cuts that need to be made, but in order for them to swallow those cuts and believe that they were part of a greater good, is that the country needs to be willing to share those sacrifices financially as well. And at this point, the cuts that are made to the military are purely just picked up by increases to some other program. And that changes the dynamic of it being a sacrifice on the point of the military to purely promises being broken to them in order to fulfill, maybe promises that shouldn't have been made to other groups, or to purely buy votes, considering that the military is a small percentage of the population.